So this is going to be a process video about layering pieces. So here I'm gluing on a tag from a piece of clothing or something that I collected, and I've also got a black and white photo. I've got some pieces that I cut off of some junk mail and some scrapbooking tickets as well, and I'm just gluing all of that down. I'm using both a glue stick and white glue to make them stick very well. I'm just gonna trim this piece that I cut from the junk mail and stick that down. Now I have everything on my page, and I'm going to add some paper lace. I call it this because it's paper and it looks like lace. Pretty self-explanatory, but it is self-adhesive, so that's very nice. You just peel off the back and stick it down. So I'm using some black and some cream colored in different patterns, all from the same pack. Now I'm just adding some tissue to my page. This is actually an old sewing pattern that I don't use anymore, and I like the color because it's kind of a vintage tan and it looks worn and old kind of, and it's also got some black printing on spots of it, which kind of looks neat. So I'm just gluing that on with a glue stick. Now I'm using some old schoolwork to create some layers, and this is a printed document. I think it's probably from English, and I really like doing this because it's neat to see like a word or two peeking through and remember what you were learning back then. So now I'm adding a bit more of the tissue on top, creating lots and lots of layers. The tissue is cool because you can see the layers behind it, so it kind of pops out to the front and makes everything else recede to the back, yet it's still visible underneath. Now I'm creating more layers by adding some watercolor paint on top. I'm using a light blue and kind of a tan color to make it look vintage. I've painted my whole page with that kind of mixture, so it's blue and tan. And the watercolor paint sticks to each surface in a different way, so you can really see the different layers standing out from one another. Now I'm just going to add some white acrylic paint on top, and my watercolor paint is still wet, so it kind of mixes in with that, creating a neat effect. This is something I like to do quite often, is play with wet and dry layering. So now I'm adding some black acrylic paint on top, just to the edges of my page, to make those pop out a little more and give it some depth. And I'm just going to blend that in with a baby wipe. I'm adding some more layers with a darker blue watercolor paint, just making some areas stand out a little more, blending that all in. Now I'm using a watercolor pencil in a dark blue, and because the page is wet, it just kind of blends in with everything. And it's fun to color with these, especially when your page is wet. Now I'm using some glossy accents to glue down a few embellishments. These are just some plastic gears that I found somewhere. And now I'm adding dark blue oil pastel to the corners of my page, kind of to frame the page and make the edges pop out again. I'm blending it in with my finger. Now I'm using some tan oil pastel in the same kind of areas just to make it look a little more vintage. And now I'm using a lighter blue watercolor pencil, and I just blended that in with a wet brush. And I'm laying out my embellishment pieces to see where I want them. And this is white glue that I'm using just to stick the giant rickrack down onto the page. I'm just going to add some more paper lace on top of that. And add a little paint to that layer just to make it not look so out of place. So I blend everything in, kind of using the same color scheme. I'm adding some pastel to the lace and the ribbon as well, and some more paint. And I'm just dabbing it with the baby wipe again. This flower that I'm using is a paper flower that I inked and covered in ultra thick embossing enamel, and then it just kind of cracked, so I'm reheating it a bit. But I do like the cracks, so some of them are still showing up. I'm just gluing this on with some glossy accents here. I like using that as an adhesive for embellishments sometimes because it dries quickly and it's invisible when it is dry. Here I'm shaking up my Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist. I believe this is the color called Tattered Leather. And I just sprayed a few drops on top. And now I'm adding some more white acrylic paint to blend the layers together a little bit. Now here I've used a stamp, and I'm just inking it off camera and stamping it onto the page to create another layer. And now I'm adding some distress ink. I think this is Vintage Photo. And I'm just adding it with a sponge to all the lighter areas so that the page looks more aged. And now I'm just using a Stampin' Up! Brown, no, I think this is a blue marker, to journal on top. I journaled in two places there, and now I'm just going over it with a black pen to make it stand out a little bit more. I often like to just write a couple phrases that bring back some memories or something on my pages. And that's my page. So thanks everyone for watching. And please stay tuned for some photos at the end. So this is the final page. You can see I added a few rub-ons after I stopped recording, and I also added some glossy accents on the black and white picture and over top of my journaling. But other than that, you saw everything that I did. So please let me know if you have any requests. I'd be happy to do them, and please let me know what you thought of this video. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.